Hey there, my name is Rose. I'm the one you don't hear about in those family photos where everyone's smiling like they don't have a care in the world. I got a sister, Lucy. She's been the star of the show since the day she was born. Little Miss Perfect, right? And me, I'm basically the backstage crew in my own life. But enough about that. So, let me paint you a picture. It's the morning of my 10th birthday. I'm at the breakfast table, thinking maybe today, things will be different. Dad's munching on his toast, buried in a newspaper. Mom's fluttering around, and Lucy's there, eyes all wide and innocent. I'm waiting for some pancakes, maybe a happy birthday, the usual birthday jazz. That's when Lucy, all sweet-like, starts to cry. Through her tears, she goes, "Rose pushed me, and I hurt my knee." I'm standing there, jaw on the floor. What? No, I didn't. But Dad just peers over his paper, frowning like I'd spilled his coffee, and Mom, well, she's already knee-deep in Band-Aids for Lucy. "You gotta be kinder to your sister, Rose," Mom lectures, no room for buts. But you heard your mom, Dad cuts in. And just like that, end of story. No pancakes. Lucy's whimpering turns into a sly grin the moment they're not looking. Birthday cancelled on account of sibling drama, courtesy of yours truly. Fast forward to Christmas that year. I wake up thinking maybe this time I'll score some decent loot. We're around the tree, and Lucy's tearing through her presents like a tornado. New phone and fancy threads. I find my name on a package, rip it open. Socks. And some dollar store alarm clock. I mean, come on. Later, I'm sitting on the porch, skipping rocks on the sidewalk. Grandma Joan finds me there, hands me a cup of hot cocoa like she always does when the world gives me the cold shoulder. "Thanks, Grandma," I manage, trying not to sound as grumpy as I felt. High school was no different. Lucy had the looks, the friends, I had acne and a job at Sal's Pizzeria. Worked my tail off, got those grades, and I'm thinking, this is gonna be my ticket out, right? There's this one night, senior year, college brochures spread out on the kitchen table like a bad hand of cards. Dad's fixing the sink, Mom's doing her Sudoku, and I'm about to lay my cards down, tell them about the colleges wanting to throw scholarships my way. I'm all, "There's this college outstate dash. Money's tight, Rose," Dad says straight off, not even looking up. "We're looking at community options." I shoot a look at Mom for some backup. She doesn't look up from her puzzle. "We're saving for your sister's college fund." That's when Grandma Joan steps in, real quiet. She talks to Dad first, then Mom. It's not pretty, but when she's done, she's got that check for me, pressed it into my hand like a secret handshake. "Make it count, kiddo," she says, eyes all fierce. And that was it. That check was my golden ticket, my ride far away from socks, alarm clocks, and Lucy's messes. Out of the circus, just like Joan said. As soon as my feet hit the campus of that outstate college, it was like I could finally breathe. No more Lucy, no more comparisons, no more feeling like an afterthought. I was my own person here, and that was all kinds of liberating. So yeah, I dug into those law books like they were the only things keeping me grounded. I was at the library more than I was at my own dorm room. Came to know every coffee stain on those tables like they were my personal constellation of caffeine. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Money was tight. I remember this one time at the campus grocery store, counting coins from my pocket for a week's worth of ramen. The cashier was tapping her nails, looking bored out of her mind. "You gonna pay or what?" she drawled, popping her gum. I was a dime short. A freaking dime. "Hold on," I mumbled, searching my pockets for a coin that wasn't there. That's when this guy behind me sighed loudly and threw a quarter on the counter. "Here, keep the change," he grunted. Embarrassing? Yeah, you bet. But it was also the day I met Mike, who turned out to be a fellow law student and a bit of a smartass. A friend, something I hadn't had a lot of. In the grind between classes and part-time jobs, Mike and I stuck together. He was as plain-spoken as they come, didn't have patience for show-offs or slackers. Wasn't the type to sugarcoat feedback on my mock trial performances either. "You gotta stop sounding like you're asking permission to be fierce," he'd say. "You know this stuff, Rose. Act like it." And I took that to heart. By the time I was sitting for the bar exam, I felt like I was carving my own path, laying down the law, you know? I wasn't Rose, Lucy's sister. I was just Rose, soon to be Rose, ESQ. At the firm, things were different. I had to prove myself again, but this time it was on my own terms. The partners, they were a mixed bag, some welcoming, some wary of the new blood. I remember being cornered by one of the senior partners, Bill, during my first week. "So, you're Joan's granddaughter," he stated more than asked, eyebrows up like he discovered gold. "Yeah, how'd you know?" I was wary, keeping my answers short and my guard up. Bill chuckled. "Joan and I fought in the same trenches once. She mailed me your resume. Said you had grit." I'd have groaned if it didn't feel like a small victory. Grandma Joan, still my one-woman fan club. In that firm, I made it known I wasn't there to ride anyone's coattails. I worked cases like they were puzzles only I could solve. In the courtroom, it was another world. I wasn't the kid sister or the overlooked daughter. I was fierce. Mike's words came back to me, about not asking for permission. "If the glove doesn't fit," I'd say, cutting through the noise, "then you must acquit." Simple, easy, nothing too fancy. To the point. It worked. So yeah, I escaped. From family expectations, from always being second best. I made it on my own terms. And it felt like freedom, hard, exhausting, but undeniably mine. It all started at the courthouse steps where I bumped into Tom, literally. Papers and apologies flying everywhere. He was there to support his buddy. I was on my first case. We laughed it off, grabbed coffee, and it turned out we could talk for hours. He was a contractor, not bothered by my legal jargon, just easygoing and genuine. Before I knew it, we were inseparable. When we decided to get married, the plan was no fuss, just us and the people we loved, sharing a good time. That plan didn't stand a chance once my family entered the picture. "It's nice," Mom would say, dabbing the corner of her eye, but her tone adding a silent "but." Dad just patted my shoulder, a silent solidarity that didn't quite warm me. And Lucy? She had to make an entrance, even if it wasn't her day. She arrived in a dress so flashy you'd think she was the one getting married. But I bit my tongue. It was my wedding day, and I wasn't gonna let her rain on my parade. At least that was the plan. Tom, he was a champ about it. Meeting my sister, he just gave me that look. Wow, she doesn't hold back, does she? I wanted to bury my head in my bouquet. You have no idea. The guests started piling in, and for a moment, it looked like it might actually be a good day. That's when Lucy decided she wasn't getting enough attention. "You're just going to ignore me? On your wedding day?" She was almost shrieking, eyes darting around hoping someone would sympathize with her. I took a deep breath, counted to 5 in my head. I was done being the peacemaker. "Lucy, not today. Please." She huffed, tossing her hair. "Whatever. I give it a year anyway." Mom shot me a warning glance, like it was my job to fix it. As usual. But something in me snapped. This was my day. Mine and Tom's. I wasn't going to let Lucy or anyone else mess with that. "Get out," I repeated, and my voice didn't even shake. Lucy looked at me with wide eyes, kind of like she did when we were kids and I'd finally stand up to her nonsense. "What did you just say?" "I'm done with your drama. This is my wedding, and you're not gonna spoil it." She sputtered, red in the face now. "But I'm family." "So? Family doesn't pull this kind of crap, Lucy. Not today. Not at my wedding." Mom tried to intervene. "Rose, don't do this, she's just..." I cut her off. "No, Mom. Enough is enough. Lucy's face was a storm cloud, and she looked ready to argue. But this time she didn't. Maybe it was the way I stood, maybe it was Tom's hand in mine, or maybe it was the crowd of guests watching the drama unfold. For once, Lucy didn't have a comeback. She just turned and strutted out, heels clicking against the pavement like a judge banging a gavel. The rest of the day went by in a blur. I said, I do, we kissed, and I've never felt so much like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not Lucy's shadow, not my parents' second choice, but Rose. Just Rose. And that was more than enough. Okay, so get this, a month in, post-wedding drama, and Lucy pulls a Houdini. Total ghost town where she used to be, right? Scoots out of town leaving behind nothing but a crummy note. And guess who's the villain in her sob story? Yup, yours truly. Turns out her exit strategy includes playing the blame game, and I'm it. Her note? Classic Lucy, painting her runaway act with a bunch of bull about how I've done her wrong. Like she's the fragile flower and I'm the big bad wolf. At the next family dinner, the air's so thick with tension you could cut it with a knife. Mom's at the head of the table, flinging accusatory glances my way like she's dealing cards at a high-stakes poker game. Rose, how could you let it come to this? She starts, and I can feel the showdown brewing. Dunno, Mom. Maybe 'cause I ain't the warden in Lucy's personal prison, I shoot back. I'm not in the mood for a guilt trip, that's for sure. Dad chimes in, voice laced with that don't rock the boat tone. Your sister thinks you never gave her a break. That's serious. Are you kidding me? I can feel my temper flaring, words hot on my tongue. After everything, you're gonna take her side? Based on what, a damn piece of paper? That's when Granny, sweet Granny, who always had my back, pipes up with a voice like thunder. Rose! Your sister's out there alone, scared, and it's your doing. You too, Granny? I couldn't believe my ears. Since when do you buy this load of crap? Her eyes got all misty. Your ways pushed her to it, Rose. You're not innocent. That was a gut punch. I've been looking out for her since diapers, and this is the thanks I get? The old lady was on a roll though. No excuses, girl. You've got a heart, use it. The whole clash was absurd. There we were, a family tearing into each other over Lucy's concocted tale. Even Granny, who'd never once doubted me, was singing a different tune, and boy, did it sting. I stormed out of there, the room thick with unsaid things. Granny's betrayal cut deep, but what cut deeper was knowing I'd stood up for myself. I was done being anybody's villain, especially not in Lucy's crafty escape act. If they wanted to believe her over me, that was on them. Tom's been acting off, real off. All those late nights at the office, trips out of town every other week, big projects he can't talk about. Yeah, right. Man's as subtle as a brick through a window. And then, like fate's trying to tell me something, I catch a glimpse of something red peeking out from his jacket pocket while I'm on laundry duty. A receipt for some fancy women's shop. No way was that for me. I didn't confront him. What's the point when you know you'll get nothing but half-truths topped with lies? I decided I'd do it the smart way, let someone else do the digging. Yeah, I called up a private eye, got him tasked on tailing Tom, seeing what really goes down when he's working overtime. Jimmy's the name of the PI, seems like he's been in the game long enough to see everything twice. Just want the straight shot, I told him, no chasing ghosts. He gave me a nod that said as clear as day, I got this. So I wait. Days feel like weeks when you're waiting for a bomb to drop. I keep things normal at home, or make a damn good show of it. Every time Tom tells me he's got to work late again, I nod, smile, and say something like, don't work too hard, babe. One night, he's at it again. Gotta finish up some things at the office, you know how it is. I shrug, playing it cool on the outside, but inside, my mind's racing. Sure, Tom. Don't forget to eat something. Wouldn't want you wasting away. He gives me a peck on the cheek and he's out the door, and I'm left feeling like I'm on some warped episode of a TV show where the wife's the last to know. I try focusing on a book, some cooking show, but who am I kidding? My head's not in it. Instead, I'm thinking about that receipt. That damn piece of paper that feels like it's burning a hole through the fabric of our little suburban life. Finally, I get a text. Not from Tom, but from Jimmy. My stomach drops when I see his name flash up on my phone. I don't open it. Not yet. Can't bring myself to. Whatever's in that message, it's gonna turn my world upside down. Instead, I pour myself a glass of wine, let the cool liquid settle my nerves. They say ignorance is bliss, but I passed that exit miles back. I have to look. I pick up the phone, thumb hovering over the screen, and then I press. But Jimmy's text isn't the full picture. It's just to say he's on the case, got some leads. We'll know more soon, he writes. That's it, then. No turning back now. Tom's little secrets are on borrowed time, and when the truth comes out, I'll be ready. There's something liberating about it, knowing that I'm no longer in the dark, playing the doting wife, smiling while something rotten's eating away at my marriage. Grandma Joan and I hadn't been seeing eye to eye recently, but the envelope stuffed with the PI's evidence was burning a hole in my bag and my conscience. Deep down, I knew she was the only one who could give me the straight talk I needed without sugarcoating the jagged pill I was about to swallow. I knocked on the door, and it swung open, revealing Grandma Joan with her arms folded, looking as staunch as ever. "Took you long enough," she said, without a hello. I let out a breath that I had been holding in longer than I realized. "Yeah, well, I'm here now." We sat down at the kitchen table, the same one we'd shared more Sunday dinners at than I could count. But today, it wasn't a warm roast that lay between us, but a file filled with photos and texts. "I've got something to say," I started, but she cut me off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Save it," she said. "I can guess why you're here, and I don't need an apology." I narrowed my eyes, ready for a quarrel, but her face softened. "What's done is done. Let's just hear what you've got." So, I spilled it, all of it. The late nights Tom pulled, the lies that didn't add up. "Do you have proof?" she asked, eyes piercing through me like she could see the answers scribbled across my heart. "It's all here," I said, tapping the envelope. She reached out and I handed it over, but she didn't open it. Instead, she looked me straight in the eyes. "You know this doesn't change anything between us, right? Family is family." That's when it hit me. Whatever had come between us, whatever words we'd exchanged that we couldn't take back, none of it mattered now. Not with this storm on the horizon. "You're right," I answered. "It doesn't change a thing. I still need you, Grandma." "Good," she grinned, but there was a seriousness in her eyes that wasn't usually there. "Because I need you too. And let me tell you, whatever's in that envelope," she tapped it and slid it back towards me, "it doesn't define who you are or what you're worth." We sat there for a while, not saying much, just being together. It felt like the air had cleared. The storm clouds were still there, but now, I wasn't going to weather them alone. Later, when I went to leave, Grandma Joan gave me a tight squeeze. "You call me, you hear? Day or night. We'll figure this out." I pulled back and looked at her. "I will. And thanks, Grandma, for everything." As I walked away, the envelope heavy in my bag, I felt lighter somehow. My steps were more certain, my spine straighter. Whatever Tom was up to, whatever the PI had uncovered, I was ready to face it. With my grandma at my back, I felt like I could face just about anything. A month had whipped by and there we were, gathered in the stiff parlor of Grandma's house, me, Mom, Dad, and my husband, Tom. An odd quiet hung in the air as the lawyer got ready to dish out the details of the will. Just the family scene you'd expect, except for the empty spot where Grandma used to be. And then, like out of some crappy soap opera, in prances my sister, Lucy, all dolled up and smirking like she's just won the jackpot on a scratch card. Mom and Dad, tears in their eyes, fuss over her like she's just returned from war, not the two-bit runaway act she'd pulled. I stayed put, my hands clenched into fists under the table. I wasn't about to give her my piece yet. She swans up to Tom, bold as brass, and plants one on him. My Tom. As if that wasn't gag-worthy enough, she starts spouting off this garbage about how she'd cooked up this whole mess. I made it all happen that Grandma would bequeath her property to me, not to the villainous Rose. Lucy gloats, thumbing at Grandma's portrait with a grin that made my blood boil. And I also took her husband away from Rose. Mom's sobbing, Dad's face is ghost white, and there's Tom, cheek to cheek with the snake, both of them looking like they've got the secret to the universe. We have the last laugh, he says, voice slippery with that grin plastered all over his face. The room's buzzing with their confidence, them thinking they've got it all sewn up. Grandma's gone, and in their mind, her house, her savings, all her bits and bobs were theirs for the taking. They didn't see me smile. The lawyer, a guy with less flair than a wet match, starts talking. So, as per Mrs. Joan Holloway's last will and testament, the lawyer drones, and here it comes, the entirety of her estate, her home, her financial assets, and her personal effects are to be left to. I already see Lucy reaching out, like she could already touch the velvet of Grandma's antique chairs. Her granddaughter, Rose Marie Kendrick, provided. Lucy's hand hangs there, midair, and the smirks melt off her and Tom's faces faster than ice cream in July. She agrees to use these assets for the continuation of the local community garden which Mrs. Holloway was fond of. The lawyer finishes with no fanfare. The silence is thick enough to cut. Mom and Dad look between me and Lucy, their tears dry now, replaced with something else. Confusion? Betrayal? Both? Finally, I break the quiet. Well, I guess that's that, huh? Lucy's mouth zips shut, all tight lines, and Tom, he's paler than a ghost, his eyes not meeting anyone's. You wouldn't believe the circus that unfolded after the will reading. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, distant relatives suddenly remembering my name. But me? I kept it tight. It wasn't about the drama, it was about staying 3 steps ahead. So, what's the plan now, Rose? Tom asked with that rat-like twitch of his lip, trying to sound all sweet and concerned. We were standing in Grandma's kitchen, a place where I'd shucked more corn than anyone's business. I leaned back against the counter, feeling the cool marble against my spine. Well, Tommy boy, first up, I'm changing the locks. His eyes darted like he'd been zapped. But, what about us? He stammered, like he hadn't been caught red-handed. I chuckled, low and steady. Us? Oh, darling, us jumped ship the moment you cozy up to my sis, just to get a piece of the pie. There were papers in my handbag, crisp and just waiting for his signature. Divorce papers, my ticket out of this mess. The PI snaps, the texts, the late-night calls. I had it all. My hand was stacked, and they didn't even know we were playing cards. Lucy's eyes flicked between us, sensing the shift in the air. She was like a cat that got caught sneaking a paw into the fishbowl. You can't kick him out. We have rights. Rights? I arched an eyebrow, amused at her guts. Sweetheart, after what I found out, the only right you're gonna need is the right to a good lawyer. Tom's face was pale, eyes darting to the door, probably scheming his next escape. But there was nowhere for him to run. Not this time. I felt the weight of the house keys in my pocket, the grooves grounding me. This was more than just a will, it was Grandma speaking from beyond, telling me to tidy up the trash that clung to her legacy. I walked over to Tom and handed him the papers. Sign these, and we can at least pretend you walked away with a shred of dignity. He snatched them up, his hands shaking like he was in a snowstorm without a coat. His signature scribbled across the page was the scribble of a defeated man. Lucy was seething. You think you've won? She hissed, her voice a strained whisper. I smiled, genuine and clear. Honey, this ain't about winning. This is checkmate. You played dirty, and you lost. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a garden to tend to and a life to live. With that, I left them there, in the dust of their greed, in the kitchen filled with memories of sugar cookies and laughter, a kitchen that would soon echo with new stories. No more whys, no regrets, just me, my begonias, and a fresh start.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.